Outlander Readalong. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Outlander Readalong. For today, we'll be talking about Written in My Own Heart's Blood, which is book 8, which is awesome. I can't believe we're here already. It's only been over a year at this point now. Look at that. But
That's crazy.
We're surviving. We're holding in. Amber's got a wonky camera, and I can barely sit up straight, but we got through our book, so we got to talk about it. So we're gonna do it. But let's give people a couple minutes here to pop on, though. Usually there's about 10 of us for this, but what are you reading right now?
Well, I know you read this book, Clayton. Do you remember that book? So I actually really liked it because it was so angsty, but then I never read the second part. So I started to read that, but it's kind of like very slow going. So I haven't been totally invested, and I'm kind of nervous for it because it was pretty angsty. So I'm reading that. I just finished Michelle Hurd's like Tempted by the Devil.
Mm-hmm.
And I really liked that. Because somebody did a 12 rec from 12 friends from like a book later in the series. So I'm like, I want to kind of read the other ones. But yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. And then I was going to start a Christy Caldwell because she has a lot of those read and listen for free. And I'm trying to read more historical. So I was going to start that one.
Yeah, I need to read more of hers for sure.
And this one had a male narrator, which I really liked. Like, I like it when they have a male narrator for historical. So
she's had like double narrators in some of hers. Yeah. So love it. Yay, Ruth. We're glad you're here.
Yeah, I got my wine and then a backup drink.
Love it.
You're ready.
I did not get my whiskey this time. I'll save it for our finale.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, Reading Wordsmith. Welcome. Hey, Nicole. I am here. I am making it. I, for real, told Amber we'll keep it between an hour and a half. We'll have a shorter version. But for our finale, we'll go all out for it and really dig into kind of the whole series, too, at that point. But there's, in all honesty, like, I, of course, had all the questions I shared. I shared them with Amber, and I shared them in our Discord, too. But honestly, I feel like with this one, we can do by character again, as we've done before, because I just think that's the most fruitful thing. And by this point in the series, it really is about the character stuff anyway. So we'll kind of do that. But, I mean, obviously, there's still some things to pick out. But, hey, Christina, hello. Hi, V, hello. I will tell you what I'm reading, and then we'll get started here. So I am reading Finding Home by Lauren Rowe.
Oh, that's our next buddy read, too, for our buddy. So I saw you reading that. I was like, oh, I can't wait to hear what she says.
Yeah, I mean, it's all things that I love. I love a guy wanting to be a dad, and he's a kind of a rock star type thing, which I don't really like rock stars that much.
Yeah.
Literally, as soon as my camera's on, I start sweating. So don't mind me, everybody, while I limp my way out of this. But otherwise, I will be sweating to death. But he knows he has a daughter, but the mom of his kid dies, and the best friend had been like helping her take care of her kid. But now the grandfather of the kid wants to get custody because he wants all the money that the guy's been paying. He has been taking care, like he's been taking care of them financially. He just didn't want anything to do with them. And if he doesn't step in and kind of like take custody, then the grandpa will get custody over the friend, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But he does want to be a part of his kid's life. He just wasn't in the place to do that before. So it's a great start so far.
That's good.
I love it.
Because I've never read that author before. I realized when they brought up that option, I was like, oh, I've seen a ton of her stuff. I'm like, And then they brought up Hero, and I was like, oh, I've seen that a bunch of places, so I need to add that too.
Yes, people love her, and I think I've only read one of her books before. My like camera is, I hate when it does that. It like flashes through all the shades.
Like
Oh well,
different lighting.
we're just rolling with it. But anyway, I know it's so annoying, and I'm like, I don't know what to do about it. But I wasn't gonna grab my ring light tonight because that's too much work. But
Yeah.
Okay, as we always do here, let's start with our first time readers. How did everyone feel about this book? Did you read it like faster, slower than some of the other ones? What did you think of it?
Well, it was my first time reading it. And I thought it was like, it didn't take me longer to get through. I just felt like, whoa, this is really long. There's so much going on in this book. So it did take me, I think most of I think like 4 or 5 days when I was like listening to it and like annotating and stuff. So not too long considering it is, a lot, but it wasn't like Fiery Cross where it took me. It felt like that was like hard. And I appreciated it because I was still like angry and bitter about the end of the last one. So I liked resolving those feelings of like that cliffhanger. Like I can't imagine having to wait that time for like the next book to come out. Like for years, like that would be really tough. So I actually really liked the way it played out. So I made me okay with the situation. Last time I was like, no.
Yeah. I love this one. And in the past, well, I mean, it still feels that way, but in the past, like this is in my like top 2 or 3 in the series. And I still think that it is. But I also agree with Nicole that I don't like all the storylines. And I will tell you, as I say about all of these later books, I skip plenty of stuff now that this is the second and third time I've read it because I just don't care about certain side storylines. I just don't.
Yeah, I got confused, like in a couple where I'm like, wait, what's going on with William now? Like,
well, and it gets weird because they have like they also have like different time happening at the same
like 3 different times or something, it's like confusing.
We have Lord John at kind of a different time at one point. And then like when William splits off from everybody, he's at like a different time, and then he doubles back and joins. So it's just very like a lot. Yeah. And again, like these are some things that get in the way of people getting through the series. Like I completely understand that. As I've said too, when I first read this series, I wasn't in a rush getting through it. So I just was chugging away, and it doesn't feel, I don't know, like, yes, they're big books, but to me, it's all like one continuous story. So it doesn't feel that. And then this book, in my opinion, does have a faster pace than a lot of them do. Even when it will have like times where things slow down, it doesn't ever really slow down. This is one of the shortest time periods that gets covered in all of the books. I always mention that. I don't have my book in my hand because I can't reach it right now, but I think this one's only a little over a year.
Yeah, I think so. I was like, was this a year or 2 years? I don't know. It felt like a year. So
like An Echo in the Bone, I think covers like 3 years. Or like almost 3 years, and this one is just a little over 1 year. And really most of that is covered in the last 2 parts because you can go by pregnancies in this as well. Like both, Rachel's pregnancy totally happens within 100 pages in the back of this book. So a good chunk of this story happens in like 3 or 4 months on the front end of it. And we didn't talk about this in book club, but I've talked about it on my channel. The entire like storyline of Bree and Roger from the start of when the kids are kidnapped to the end is like, most of it happens in 2 days, but there is a 3 month like something, right? Like all of the stuff of like when Roger goes through, she's dealing with all this stuff with like, oh, the kid really didn't get taken and run around. Like a good chunk of Bree's story, which is like broken up in those, all takes place within 48 hours. And then she goes to America and like they wait there until the next like solstice.
Yeah.
And then comes back to go through. So like all of that happens in a really condensed time. It's just we split their parts. I believe they have parts 2 and 6 are their parts of it. And that's it. Like when I first read through this, I felt like there was way more going on with them because of how she spreads it out. But both in Echo in the Bone and in this one, they only have like 2 parts of the story.
Yeah.
Yet it feels like so much happens, which I mean, it
Because it's
does.
sprinkled like throughout the book. So you're like thinking it's like a longer time than what it really was.
Yeah.
The war stuff, I think we kind of.
This dragged for some parts for me, especially during the war. It took me about 2 weeks to read it, but that is about average for these. Definitely fair. I was really invested in some of the storylines, but didn't care for others. Totally get it. Your first time, but it got away from me, and you haven't quite finished yet. I've liked it so far, though. Okay, well, you'll have to decide if you want to duck out for the spoiler at the end, Amanda, but we'll wait to get to it in case there.
With what Nicole was saying, like I saw your, like when you talked about that Jenny, that actress is going to be doing the audiobooks. I was like, I wish they would get Sam to do like
I know
the Jamie parts. Like
they can't. There's too much of a bleed through of people already making like Jamie. But you know, they could have though. Like personally, in my opinion, for me, I think that Roger could do it.
Yeah.
Like Richard, I think that he could do it. Like I would believe him as he has a thicker Scottish accent than Sam does anyway. So he doesn't really have he's Scottish, but because of his like theatrical training and like where he's lived, he doesn't truly have as thick an accent as Jamie does, but
or I was thinking Dougal because I just love that.
Yeah, but he's also like older though. Like that's the thing.
Yeah, he has an older voice. Which because that's like the Davina Porter. Is that who it is? She does have an older voice, so you kind of think like you're kind of used to it at this point, but it sounds older than what you envision Claire sounding. So
yeah, and
I think that'll be interesting.
But yeah, from the beginning, and like even when she started, she was like 60 when she started doing these, and now and now she's in her like I believe. So yeah, it when I first found that out, I was a little bit shocked, but it immediately makes sense. Like I'm glad that she's going to be doing it, and I'm really excited to hear what she does because I mean, there's some women who do wonderful male voices. We know that. So we'll see what she does with it. But okay. This one was a struggle in the middle. I still haven't finished. I started the last part about an hour ago. I think being so close to the show timeline hurt it. I mean, we will get into it, Lisa. That is what we all feel.
Very confusing.
As I've like said before, I wish I had known when we started this readathon how it was going to go, because I might have tightened our schedule a little. Because if we had finished this one before we watched season 8, those of us who watched the show, I think that would have been better for us all. Because it was a real struggle for me with both books 7 and 8 because I had so many things in my head. And so many things that are right, but also changed. And then when I do my reviews, I just have people, I'm saying this, of course, so kindly to everyone, but I just have everyone nitpicking the living shit out of me when I do those. But I know what I get into when I do those. I'm not criticizing anyone.
They're the Outlander experts.
It's everyone wanting to be helpful, but I'm like, bitches, you could make your own, okay? Be nice to Jen, all right? No.
Because those, when I was watching it, so much goes, like, I can't imagine how much planning goes into those videos, because you're like going into detail, like the episode, then going over like what's missing and then compare. I'm like, it's really good. I got to give you props, because I feel like I needed to write notes this time around, but I just didn't have time. I'm like, because there was so much going on that I'm like, I get confused, like, wait, like with all the side characters.
I never used to have to do as much as I do now, because it wasn't like much more straightforward. I could be like, oh, this is in the book, this isn't in the book, this is in the book, this is in the book. And literally I had to, after each episode, I have to reread the book, because I would compare, and then I would be like, okay, well, are they going to pull this in? Should I talk about this, or should I just wait? Because they were skipping stuff. Anyway, it was a whole thing. It was a whole So anyway, point being, I'm fine with anyone wanting to correct me. I just also get annoyed when It's the little stuff. Like when I said the
Yeah.
wrong date, I'm like,
Date.
people, you know which fucking date I'm talking about. Don't do this, okay? Like, don't be the Karen. I know I have Karens who watch Karen. I love you. I'm not talking about you, Karen. I promise, 100%. But the cultural name of a Karen who wants to nitpick when I'm like, I have said the right date for 8 episodes. You know what I meant. I love Karen here. She said first, sorry, let me see what she said. I had a hard time keeping the book straight. Yes, Karen, definitely did.
Well, and I even watched it. I watched the last half of this season after I read the book, and then I was still getting confused.
Yeah.
Then, like, I'm like, wait.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Okay, that can stay down there. That's fine. I just threw my phone across. Won't be trying to get that for the next hour, so I hope no one calls me. We'll be fine. Okay. I watched all the show recap. Oh, yeah. I know I definitely felt bad at the end of my episodes because I was like, wow, if I would have known they weren't going to do that, I wouldn't have like spilled the beans so much, which I mean, it's fine. I'm doing them for book readers, but I wouldn't have talked so much about the Bree and Roger thing if I'd known they weren't going to show it, because I was literally like, this will be the end of it. This is what it's going to be. And then it wasn't. So it was awkward.
Well, then I wasn't watching your stuff till like after I read the book and after I watched the show. And then like I would see your things on Instagram and it was like where your like predictions like waiting. And then when I read the book, I was like, oh, it's for Blackjack. I was like, that must have been what she was waiting for. And I really wish she would have been there. I love that actor.
I know. Okay, so before we go into Almond, so did you feel like a theme for this one? And what was like the through line, if there was one? Like, did you feel one kind of?
I don't know. It felt like a lot to do with obviously Jamie and Claire like coming together and resolving and working through what they had to go through in the last book. And like just the name of it and like what Jamie had to go through with Claire is like she's his like purpose and like, you know, and just I don't know, it just felt like such a solid of like them going through such a traumatic thing together, but they always work through everything together. And so I don't know if that's making sense.
Yeah. I know that if I was correct in my nerdiness, the cover of this book has a very specific design. Let's see. It's right here. I can reach it.
I know. I'm like, I only have my ebook in front of me, so it's the Outlander one.
This like crest on the front. I've heard Diana talk about that. It represents. It's this like infinity with like, but it has 8 points on it. And I've heard her talk on it that there are kind of like 8 main POVs within this one. Well, there are more than 8. There are. I have them written down in this one, every single one, because we do get quite a few new POVs that only get literally one. Like literally Hal has 2 paragraphs of a POV, which I thought was funny.
Yeah.
But there's like 8 main POVs. And I think it's supposed to be, it's Ian, William, Claire, Lord John Grey, Jamie, Rachel, and Jem.
Oh yeah.
Those are like the main ones. And then, yeah, there's also a couple more, but those are like the main ones. And to me, this one is really about like that like infinity symbol in it too is really about like how they're all connected to each other.
Yeah.
And that there's no beginning or no end to it. And I really think that this book really pushes that on us even more. As we get into some of these different places people went. And it's why I think in some ways Diana's made it so complicated on purpose. I don't think there is a way to explain it, right? And I think that's something that in earlier books, when it feels more straightforward, when it's like, oh, we travel 202 years, she was able to. And then it's like, oh, well, if you add a little extra boost, you can maybe go a little bit further or do this or whatever. Then we find a guy who's only traveled 100 years. And then there's people who they traveled like even further and like, how does, you know, so there's more and more that comes to it. And so what I think is so interesting, even though it's very confusing to like actually try to to contextualize it, what I think is so cool about it is that even that, little journal they're writing, that's supposed to be a time traveler's guide to it. There's no right or wrong answer. Like Bree is trying to write things down for her kids in case they need it someday. And it's like, there's literally no answer to this. And then you have you have Jemmy and Mandy, who they break all the rules pretty much anyway, that. Whereas like you have Buck, who it's very clear that this little bit of travel is really wearing on him. He's only traveled twice, and will he be able to do it again? Like they don't think he'll be able to do it again. And, those things really, whereas like Jem and Mandy, do they even need it? They can pretty much hear people through time almost.
Like do they even need the stone or whatever
do they even need any help to go through? And I just think that's so fascinating, even though as someone who wants to be logical, I want to know what the rules of like time travel are.
Yeah.
But as so many authors who try to write time travel know, like there isn't a great way to do it. It's why I don't love reading time travel. I just talked about this with Crystal and her, I was in her sprints with her patrons with her. And I said, one of the reasons I don't like time travel romance is I don't think there's ever good answers to it. Like truly, Outlander is one of the only stories. There's like 2 other, and they're very like standalone on their own stories I've read, because there's always either like, it always has to be either like reincarnation then, or it's you're leaving someone behind, or like, what about your family? Like there has to be such specific parameters for a time travel story to be like a romance that like works, so it's all, so to me that's kind of what the theme of it, to pull back to what I was saying, is that it's how they're all connected, but also how there isn't really going to be a right answer. Like what stuff came before and what comes next. Is it all in a loop? Is it all whatever? Like what stuff meant? So I think in this book, she either decided to just be like, screw it, like we're not going to try to explain things anymore. I'm going to do what I want. Or the point the whole time is that you don't know. You can't know. Right?
That's what kind of confused me when that one doctor kind of healer guy came in. I was like, oh, is she throwing that in like to kind of like be like, well, it's not the simple way we always thought it, like the basic way, like, and it just messes with the mind, like of different things of like, now I'm like, wait, was that in the show or the book? Where it was like Buck was bringing up how like they brought Dougal to them. Like it just messes with your mind. Like if they tell things, it could change everything that happens of like Jamie never meeting Claire. So that stuff just like messes with your mind. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and like someone asked it in the thing, which in the show they won't have to answer this, but like Roger's met Jenny, and he's
gonna meet her
again. Is she gonna know him? I don't know if she will. So there are all those things where it's like, was it always going to be that way? Or and again, as I've said, I personally think it always does go that way. So you're not necessarily breaking something, but we'll get into even more of that, which again, we're already spent 30 minutes just here, but here we go. And how did Bree and family figure out how to get to the same place before just 40 years later? Well, I think that's kind of the thing, is that's when we rely on the kids.
Yeah, like Mandy feeling for her Roger, think of daddy. And then
they've just followed them. So to me, that is why, like, I wish imagine the type of like time traveling adventures that Jem and Mandy could have.
Yeah.
So, because for them, it was just, she's like, do you feel daddy? Do you feel him? And then we followed him to daddy. So it's just wild. It's just wild. That was me questioning that. Well, yes, Ruth, it was. And we'll find out very soon. The time travel stories are always so fun to me. I actually kind of prefer the whys defy logic. It's something you don't have a real life answer for, so I'm okay with because magic. Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Magic. Absolutely. I just don't like time travel when we're leaving people behind. So that's why it's like to me. And it's why even Diana, like Claire's an orphan, and the only person in the future that cares for her is Frank. Like literally the only person who would ever even have known that Claire disappeared was Frank. You can't do that with someone who has like a full family. It's tough. And as we see the people who do time travel, like, to be honest, right? Like Roger, he doesn't have anyone left either. When he, you know, there's only friends that people have. There's acquaintances people have.
Yeah.
There isn't anybody who really goes that's our main characters anyway. Of course, there's people attaching to that do. But I mean, for us as readers to really enjoy it, you don't want them leaving behind a ton of people that they love. So, okay. So, yeah, there we go. All right. So, let's do this. Who was anyone's new favorite character this time?
Mine was Jane. Like, I really liked her character, and like you said in your things, I thought the actress was phenomenal because it made me like her even more. But I thought that was such a unique storyline, and like told some really heartbreaking, important stuff of like what it would be like to be, you know, a prostitute in that time. And I just really liked her character a lot. So she was like my favorite new character.
Yeah, she's great.
She was feisty, puts William in his place.
Yeah.
Because he has a lot of growing up to do, you know? So she kind of, I think, pushes that a little bit, you know, especially when he was going through such a hard time. Like, running into her, I think, was very beneficial for him. Yeah, that was cool.
Yes, I know. Poor Brian. I loved what she said. She's like, we can't go there. He looked at me and it was like he was seeing her. And
that was so sad.
And I was like, yeah, especially with the little boy, especially having Jem there. Like, yes, I love it. It's great. It's great. I want to. So I do like Hal. I do like him a lot. But honestly, I consider this Jenny kind of a new character this time. Just because we're getting to actually spend like quality time with Jenny, which we haven't. And she's so kind of like different in this one, but yet completely the same. And I really like Jenny in this that she comes with. And again, that's why the show
I was kind of upset with the show. Like, where's Jenny?
Yeah.
Like, because her and Claire have so many like good conversations, and it was like great, like them kind of, because before, you know, I was like frustrated with Jenny in the previous book, but you understood her reactions. But it's like, like she's in a different place now, and it's like her being more accepting of Claire and like being there for her, like even like at the end when Claire sees, you know, the attacker or whatever, and her telling Jenny about all that. Like, I just really like, I'm like, I hope she'll show up later, but I really love Jenny's character. I think she's such a great character.
Yeah. I like Hal, but I knew him from Lord John Grey's books. Oh, yeah.
See, I haven't read those books. That's when I was getting confused. When I was reading the last one, it was bringing up the Percy, you know, Beauchamp or whatever. I was like, who is this guy? And I had to Google him. And then I'm like, oh, maybe he's brought up in the Lord John Grey books, because I don't know. So, because I haven't read them, but.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's tons of references in this one because she wrote a lot of those ones in between, like, I don't know, between like books 5, 6, 7, like she had those ones coming out. Because there's a few other references too. Like, of course, he references stuff with Percy, but he also references like that one. There was I think it's his like, not his boot boy, but there was a guy who used to be
his lover
like,
or whatever.
Well, yeah, there was a guy who was like his butler type person, and people get referenced, and it's like, you know, those were his like lovers and everything.
Yeah, because I think he references him too when they have like their quality in the previous book when they're in bed together or whatever, and he talks about his like lover that he had or whatever. And I was like, oh, I love any more like Lord John Grey stuff. I love it. So
yeah, he's great. Good stuff. Okay, so like I said, I have a lot of characters for us to go through, but I think we got to start with what the reaction that we get and everything, because, oh man, John, what are you doing, bro? Like, what are you doing here? I love these scenes though. Some of my favorite scenes in the whole series. Because honestly, like, it's hard to watch it happen. Because you also are like, John, you literally know what you're doing right now. Like, what? We don't need to be getting in a fight about this, but
like it's like he wanted a beat down or something from Jamie, because I felt like he pushed past that boundary that he always has with Jamie. Like he knows. And for him to say like we're both effing you, like no, like he wanted to get like, because it felt like, and that's what I was shocked at the end of the last book, where Jamie just goes, oh, like, you know, very like, what, when he says he has carnal relations with his wife. And I was like, really? Like Jamie's got a pretty big temper. Like, where's the reaction? I think he's just so shocked, you know, like never expected that to even be a thing.
Yeah.
So like,
well, what I think is fascinating though is because when Claire and Jamie talk about it later, like Jamie isn't actually surprised once it's explained.
yeah,
Not about, like he says to Claire, he's like, you do things with your body, and I can see if you're both drunk that it happened. You know, he's not so surprised. It's that John pushes that bit of like, because we were both thinking about you. We weren't doing it because we were attracted to each other, which again, I feel like in Jamie's mind, that's less of a sin if like we got married to protect her and then we were together because we were, you know, in his mind, it's like Claire was sad and like John just like let that happen. Right. And for John to be so like literally proactive in it and be like, do you think we wouldn't like you? Did you think we weren't grieving you? Did you think we were just like, you know, everything was fine? So I understand that. And then with Jamie, I feel like he has so many emotions bottled up to that, where when John says it that way, he isn't just thinking like, oh, I'm disgusted that you would be thinking about fucking me, because he knows John's thought that before. It's him being like, well, what did you do to my wife? Like, did you push this on her then? Were you doing that, you know, sinful thing
or whatever?
Which of course John is just, you know, which is irrational too, because again, John has slept with women before. It's not like
it's not like he hasn't done it.
Never hasn't. I don't think he wanted a broken arm. Yeah. But
I know, I was like, how hard did you punch him, Jamie? Like, the eye stuff, I can't take the eye stuff. Like, the eye thing, like, grossed me out. But
I love
that did it when Jocasta's eye thing, when she had to stick the needle in her eye. I was like, oh, like when I was
literally like pops his eye. It's so gross. Here said, I don't know what John expected except perhaps to protect Claire. Yeah, that is a good one Jamie brings up too. Like he's like this stupid honorable man. Like he wanted me to be angry with him and not be angry with her. Whereas like I wouldn't have been, you know. And again, John might not understand this, but like if Jamie had been mad with Claire and they had a rough and tumble, it would have been a completely consensual situation.
Yes.
Anyway,
their usual passionate, angry.
Yeah, they're very like, I missed you. Now I'm gonna just like get all over you and everything.
Yeah.
But
well, and I do love that Jamie says that to her too, like, because it is true, like how Claire uses physical and like sex to like work through things and to feel connected and to feel things. So I was like, you know, he knows her so well. It's like they're, you know, so
I truly enjoy this. So one of my annotated books I did for someone is I did Outlander this month. And when you will go back and look through Outlander, it's all there. Like it's all there. All of that physical stuff, all of that like deep connection that's there. It's all there right from the beginning. And I've, you know I said this in one of our first book clubs. I said in one of them, like, you will see these bonds that are forged right now, it carries all the way through, right?
Yeah.
You know, from like they fight until like sometimes they just need to be touching each other to be able to connect. And that happens all the way back in the beginning of their marriage, and it happens all the way through. Like sometimes when they just get so upset, they can't listen to what the person is saying. They have to like literally fuck it out first. And then
like after her assault too, like where she wanted to be like physical, like there's so much of them just using touch, using their sexual connection and like to kind of anchor them. Like it's all throughout the series.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now I have some character by character. Let's do that.
Mhm.
And people can jump in. So I did start with Jamie. So what do you think of the Jamie in this book? How is he different from before his thought, from before his death? Like, I don't know how else to say this.
Yeah.
How does he feel different in this book than in the previous book? To it, does he feel different to anybody? Because
He feels different in some ways. Like, I feel like, and this one too, it's kind of crazy to watch him be so possessive and jealous of Claire with like her emotional connection to, Lord John Grey, because it's like they went through a lot together. They grieved together. They bonded the loss of Jamie. So it's like he's like, don't touch my wife. Don't like hold her hand. Don't so it's kind of weird to see that from Jamie, because usually he's very confident. Like they're soulmates. And he doesn't like, you're used to seeing Claire getting jealous of him and John, but like the other way, that was kind of, I still love it though. Like I love seeing him be like possessive and jealous over her. And I just want him and Lord John Grey to be fine, because I love their relationship. But like, but the same things is like him continuing to like feel so responsible for his men, and these men he takes, like when it's like the war time and all that stuff, you still see the same Jamie where he takes that so seriously, and he always steps up to the plate when he is called to duty and all that kind of stuff. So that felt very like, it's still our same Jamie, but I don't know, like that felt a little different after his him coming back from the dead.
Yeah. I think too, it's so hard because he's always been very aware of his responsibilities. So it's tough to, I think he's very aware of like the consequences of like failing this time. Is maybe what it is. He's always a very like humble man, and he, he's always willing to step in there with everyone and like be that. But I think that, I mean, besides just the consequence that Claire and John did fuck each other while he was gone, which again, and he says that, and it's said in the way that Diana does, where she makes it almost a joke. But when he says, he's like, I don't care who you sleep with, like, you're mine. You sleep with whoever you want, or whatever happens to you, like, I still want you. But the consequences of Claire almost killing herself, that is to him a consequence that he couldn't imagine that happening. So it doesn't get said much, but it does get brought up a couple times. Like there's one, particularly when she gets hurt, right? And we get quite a few chapters from his POV, which we don't always get as many of those. Where he's thinking, he's like, could I slit my wrist? He's like, I probably wouldn't do it that way. I'd probably do it another way. But then he's like, well, I wouldn't do that because then I wouldn't get to probably be with her if I like did that. So what? I do, And so I think he's much more aware of the consequences of like, if he gets hurt and goes, like, and it's for sure, number one, she's not going to survive another like fake out of that. And number two, she really might take her own life if he wasn't there. So there's just, that's something they always say to each other, is that I can't do this without you. But it's another thing when now he's felt it, because she's felt it so many times, right? But even when she went back, he always was imagining her living for his kid. And so he was like, I can't, he's like, in his mind, he was always going to go before her anyway, literally in time wise. But he's like, but I got to live a good enough life so that I can get to heaven and I can be there for her when, like, that's just how Jamie thinks, right? That's how he thinks. And so now to see the consequences of like, wow, if we really truly are separated and it's not just by time.
Like, I feel like they took it more seriously before that last battle. And like when she does get shot, like I felt like they were a lot more serious of like, this could be it. This could be like, and they're thinking more of it being on Jamie's side. They don't expect what that's going to happen. But like, they just seemed like it's more elevated of like, and Jamie's running out of his multiple lives here that he's been told he's had. So it's like, it's a lot more, intense. And I also do love that, because it's like Jamie knew that like when she thought he was dead. Like he put himself at risk to get to her as fast as he could, because it's like, who knows what she could do. I don't think he was thinking she'd kill herself, more like go back to Bree or something. But but now that he knows that that's where her mind went, like I just think it's so much more intense for them, of like, we got to make it through this together.
Yeah. It's also an interesting thing too, because so this is just me speculating on it too, is like he knew they were going to think that, but also he knows the consequence now too of things being written down that aren't true. So not only because she would know that, but like there's a possibility that his daughter and his son-in-law see that he like does that, you know, like because they're watching that. I don't know. He's always been aware of that as someone when he worked in like paper and like printing and everything. Lies being written down have very big consequences. It's a very kind of chilling reminder that honestly has comparisons to today too, but move on with that. So, one other thing I want to say, I did feel particular kinship with Jamie, that he does that stuff with John and then his bat goes out and he's stuck at someone's house for
days. You're really saying like, Jamie's age here.
I know. It's like, I didn't need to empathize with him quite to that level, but that definitely.
I know. I was like, oh God, his back again? No, not again. During the worst point, like he needs to get back to Claire.
So inconvenient, because he's like, I literally can't move. So
yeah. I'm sorry you can connect to that now.
I know. It's like, dang,
so horrible.
He resigned his commission in the Continental Army to take care of Claire. Would he have done that before? Well, I think he would have, Ruth. That's an interesting question. Like, I don't agree with the premise of asking it. But I think he didn't hesitate for a second, and maybe that's a little bit different. Because I think that he would have done that before, but the fact that like he's like, I don't even need to explain it to them, like fuck off, like I'm done, you know, I'm not leaving, so goodbye, like whatever, we'll deal with it. I think him not hesitating is maybe a bit different. Like he's not torn up about it at all, like he doesn't even reconsider it. Like one of the questions that I have on my list here later on is like, you know, what will the consequences of this be? And for him it's not even he's like, no, like
he doesn't care.
Right. Like,
that's what I was wondering. I'm like, because my mom asked me, she's like, will he be like a deserter if that's gone? I'm like, I don't think so, because he signed it for a certain, like, and he did his duty, like what he was supposed to do. So I don't think he's like considered.
He's just not letting himself be pressed in again, because he's like, well, and that's him at the end too. That I think is a difference. You see, like Ruth, talking to Ruth here. Of like, I don't think it's a surprise he resigned when he did, but I think it's interesting this time too, where he's like, my family's so important. And you can see like literally it's made very visceral at the end of like how many people are relying on him. Like we always know it, but he has all of Marcelly and Fergus's family. He has Jenn, he has Ian and Rachel, like all of them. Like he is head of that family and they're all with him. And it's like, that is where his battle needs to be, not leading men for them. Like, you know, and also said they're going to win. So there's also that. She's like, I don't know what happens when here and then. Like, I know it ends in this place. I don't know what will happen between then. So he's like, America's going to win. I believe that. My family's most important here. So I do think him just not letting them push him into it. He didn't even play around with it. I think he would have tried to be more diplomatic in the past and be like, well, maybe I'll advise you some. I don't know. I think he might have tried, but he was just like, no.
And then with it being that Charles Lee guy, that's like, it is so funny because when I was reading this book, I was like, Charles Lee, like, I know that name. And then I'm like, I play Assassin's Creed and there's one game that's set in like Connor's game and it's set in this. I literally started playing it again because I was like, oh, I want to see all those George Washington, like the characters. But I was like, oh yeah, he was like the bad guy in the game.
Yeah, I love to though when like she's like, oh, I've never even heard of him, and I was like, oh, I mean, I've definitely heard of him, but that's the part of like
that's like I wish Claire would have looked into American history, but she didn't know she was going to be ending up in America. So it was like before you go back in time, so she would have been.
Bree knows all this shit. I did think it was funny. Sorry, we're gonna get to her character in a second, but when she gets the letter from Frank and he's like, if you've read my book, and she's like, oh, I haven't read my dad's book. I laughed so hard because I was like, that would totally be me. He's like, if you've read my book, you'll know.
His historian book. Oh,
your dad has died, you haven't read his book. Like that is a little Your dad guy you love. Anyway, let's keep going through these. People got lots of stuff to say here. So he really realizes that Claire means more than fighting in some ways. Yes, she is what he's fighting for. I think there has been a gradual change in Jamie over the last 2 books, being faced with his grown son, having come close to shooting him more than once, the loss of Ian, the rush to get back. Yes.
Yeah.
Claire, the coming war. I think he's just realizing a new level of mortality. Yes, I know, and I hate saying it, but like he's getting old, man. He is. He
Yeah.
is getting old, and the people he loves are getting old. Yes, this
Like
is true.
where he had that confrontation with his son, and he's like, "Oh, I wouldn't have been able to take him." But and in my mind, I'm like, "But you're Jamie Fraser. Like you could take him."
I know,
but
his
he's
son's
older.
This is like, oh my gosh. I never nitpick this anymore, but one of the things the show does kind of like annoy me is like that kid needs to be the same size as him. I'm sorry.
Yes.
And Lord John is 5'5".
I can't compute it. Like, so every time you bring it up, like in these things, I'm like, wait, but he's like the same height as Jamie.
No, he's like 5 inches shorter than Claire or something. Like short.
Yeah,
So
because and then they bring up how much he looks like Jamie, and I'm like, he doesn't really look like Jamie that much in the show. I'm like, he kind of has, but because in this it was like when William confronts everybody and they're like, oh yeah, like obviously, like I pretty much put it together seeing you two together, and I'm like,
Fanny notices after seeing Chris, like, oh, he doesn't look like John, he looks like William. She says, and it's like, yeah, pays attention.
It'd probably be more obvious if we had a 5'5" actor playing Lord John Grey.
I know. We wouldn't want that.
But we love that actor. So
even like Sam Heughan isn't the right.
Yeah.
Like I believe Jamie.
I don't know how tall Sam Heughan is, but maybe he just seems. I know he's so perfect.
He's 6'1", and like Jamie's like 6'5", 6'6", and so is Roger. Like they're all like that height. So that's why they literally, like we said this last time, like that's why Jamie can't even be in the same city as William.
Yeah.
He's like, you need to leave because your son's here and like you look just like him and like they're gonna notice. That
makes it more obvious too, like that Lord John Grey was right when like every single person's like, oh yeah. Obviously.
Okay, we gotta keep going. We're only on Jamie.
Come on. My God.
Help me out here. I think part of this has to do with Scotland being his home. Yes. Jamie lost everything he once valued. He won't let it happen again. Yes, Karen. Picking up the book. Okay. So let's talk about Claire. Let's do it this way too. What are some of your favorite moments of Claire in this one? Everyone, pick like 1 or 2 moments out of your favorites and maybe one thing you don't like that she did. Let's do that with these characters. I think that'll help because
I didn't like what she did in the last book. I was upset. But in this book, I understood it. And I empathize with her more. You know, I'm more Jamie, like you're close for business for good once you're with Jamie Fraser. But I understood, like I loved the conversation that her and Jamie had when they finally come together. I think that was one of my favorite moments because it made me really connect to her and realize she was literally going to kill herself. Lord John Grey saved her life. They both like were going through a traumatic experience and helping each other when she brings up like the triage. And like, you know, it all made sense where I was like, okay, like I more empathized with her character instead of just being a Jamie stan. And so I really loved that conversation.
That's why I said it's the scene with Lord John Grey, the morning after scene in the last book.
Yeah.
And the scene with Jane. They're my top 5 scenes of the whole series, those 2 scenes. Because it's not fully shown because Claire's sarcastic and she's sarcastic in how she talks in her own POV. So you don't truly realize how bad it is because it's kind of played off to be funny because she's like, oh, I didn't know you still sleep with women. And oh my gosh, like,
where she uses humor to like get through things, you know, like
joking. And it's truly like, no, her and John, like, well, more so like John literally saved her life.
Yeah.
And did it need to be through sex? No. Like it didn't. Like they also could have just like
but they were wasted and they were in that place.
And they were talking about Jamie and so they did that. It still would have been in a way an emotional betrayal if she was curled up and cried with Lord John all night. Like it's the emotional part of it that is hard for us to see. But there's that little bit we get to see that like he becomes a really good friend to her in that short amount of time. Like when she's staying with him and you know, he gives her something to do. Like there's his nephew to take care of. There's something for her to be focused on. And that's what like needs. And so, yeah, that discussion with Jamie, I love it because it's good because Jamie's already getting it. You know, that time he's stuck in that bed. I know that's why Diana puts that in there. Is it's like he has that thing with John. He has to leave John there. He gets hurt. He's stuck with these people. Which by the way, he's just the best. Like he's like playing with the baby while the lady's trying to watch. So cute. And like by the time he gets back to Claire, he's already processed most of it.
Yeah.
He just wants her to flesh it out for him. And I really like that, you know, that he already is kind of there. He just wants her to say, he's like, I want to hear from you. I'm kind of already feeling this. That doesn't mean he's just going to forgive John right away. He's going to put a lot of the blame on John because he's like, I know how you are, which again feels kind of condescending, but he's like, hold on.
And pisses her off. Like she's
I've known you, you know, he's like, I've known you for 30 years. Okay. I know what would have happened.
She's like, oh, I'm a whore or whatever. It's like, no, that's not what he's saying.
You feel with your whole body, which is what makes her a healer. It's what makes her, you know, all of those things. But it's also when it's like used against her. Because to be honest too, Claire's, we say her body always feels things based on like emotional reactions. Because what happens at the end of the book, now let's like, because I said we're talking about our favorite Claire moments. A very intense moment for me is when she realizes that she's forgiven the man who had like raped her.
Yes.
And the thought process she goes through where like she kind of is having this panic attack, but also like her body is reacting to the memory of everything.
Yeah.
And
it's like the PTSD.
She's literally having like secondhand, like, you know, not being in control of her body's like arousal almost in it. And it's like horrifying because that was her body's survival instinct. And that honestly, it's a totally different situation, but it also does echo back to the fact that in her lots of grief and her pain, like it was a physical reaction to like get relief from it.
Yeah.
And when she's having this PTSD reaction, her body's also having these things. It doesn't mean there's any desire or anything built into it. It's like, so anyway, my favorite like Claire moments in this one are, yes, I love that discussion. And I love how it really, you know, they haven't had something quite that shakes them up like that in a very long time. And then I also love, what's the other one I really love? Oh, I love when they get back to the ridge too. I love her when she gets her cat back.
I always get emotional over the cat.
I know. I love the cat. So
like when she was leaving the ridge and she saw the cat and she's like, it's a freaking cat, you know, and she's like crying over it. Like it hits me.
Yeah. And she also has some of the gnarliest surgeries in this one of anyone. Like between the,
even like her, like how she steps up. Like I also like how she's like a battle in herself of how she's setting up triage and things outside of like that church or whatever. And she's just so strong and like not gonna leave these men. And, you know, so like, even though you're like, come on, you're gonna put yourself in danger, but that's just who she is. Like, and so it's, you have to look up to her for being that she's very strong.
Yes, definitely. I didn't like Claire's irritation with Jamie about John. After all, she and John didn't have another encounter when they were sober. That's fair. I guess, Karen.
Although I didn't love it when like she did the hand job.
That's what she's talking about.
Yeah, I was like that. I didn't really love that part. Like I was like, oh.
Yeah, I don't mind. I really don't. I don't mind.
But I felt like it was her being there for Lord John Grey.
Yeah,
like her. Like they were just empathizing with each other. And that's what I loved because previously they were always so jealous around each other about Jamie. And then now they came together as like, they fully understood each other. I just thought it was really moving, like seeing them have a connection finally, where it's not like, it's about them, not about Jamie, you know?
I don't think it's wrong that anyone be annoyed with it. I'll be straight up with that. I think it's perfectly fine. I just read it as like Claire doesn't need it anymore. And, you know, like she doesn't, she doesn't need that connection anymore. But John kind of still, you know, because he is, I mean, he's still a dude. So he's like, oh, I thought maybe you need it again tonight. And she didn't have to. Like, he wasn't shoving himself on her by any means. She's like, oh, well, just let me do this. So that was her maybe going one more. I don't think they ever did it again, too. Is the thing. Because I think when that happened, he's like, oh, she doesn't want this to be a continuing thing. And I don't know. That's how I read it, is I'm like, if she had wanted to continue the comfort thing, he would have. But he didn't. She was like, well, let me just take care of you because you came in here kind of expecting something and we won't be doing it anymore. Because she is there with him for months. Like, it's I believe 6 weeks, and it never happens again. But again, I don't disagree with this of like Claire's irritation with him. But the only thing I'll say is like, I think I would be annoyed with Jamie too. Like, he beat the living shit out of a man who, again, is like a quarter of his size. Because his hot head got out of the way, and then leads him to be kidnapped and would have like died of like an infection of the eye, you know, because of his hot temper. But I do appreciate us seeing Jamie's temper again, though, because it reminds us of why William is such a little bitch sometimes. Because
why he loses it. Like,
okay, just say so. Brianna is also very tall and imposing, much wider than the yes. I always mention that too. Yes, she is taller than Claire, almost like very tall woman. Very true. Which I love about Book Bree, because she's taller than me. Okay, we got to move on. Let's go on to young Ian and Rachel. What do we love about them? How do we feel about them? We're gonna push.
Young Ian's like my little baby boy. I love him so much. I love him and Rachel so much. Like, Rachel's so strong and like accepting of everything, even with like his violence. And then he feels guilty about, you know, when he has to kill somebody, and he's thinking about it, you know? But like, I loved the scene where like stupid William tried to like kiss her, and he's so jealous, and she's infuriated that he did that to Ian. And she's just a fiery, like,
I know,
stand by her man woman. And so I just really love them. I do have a hard time watching them in the show a little bit, because I think it's the actor. I'm like, oh, like, but I still love them. Like, I think they're such a great couple. I'm just I'm like happy for Ian that he finally has Rachel, you know, and then she's going to have a baby, you know, and like, that was a huge issue for him with his previous wife. So it's just, I love Ian. Like, I love Ian.
Yeah. I know. I always said that. I'm like, John Bell, he plays young Ian really well.
Yes.
He didn't quite
we recast it as older, like.
Yeah, he didn't quite transition into the heartthrob that I feel like Ian in the book is.
Yeah.
Like, I love him. I always say, like,
I kind of picture him a little bit differently.
Probably my number two. Like, Roger's probably my number two, but like Ian and Roger are like tied a lot of times for me. Because I mean, Roger just gets more page time. We have more of his POV for longer, and as I've said, Roger's the much more actual attainable type of guy. Like, he's people have a husband like Roger. That man exists.
Yeah. He's like the guy next door.
Yeah.
Ian's pretty badass, like in the books, you know, like, you're like, he's ruthless, he's badass, he's, you know, so.
Yeah. I know, like, he gets shot, he gets hurt, he's scouting, he's fighting people off, he rescues William. That will be the second time he's rescued William from a gorge, almost being dead. You think?
And William just fucks him over, like.
I know. We have to remember, William is like 18.
Yes, that's true.
Young Ian is about almost 10 years older than him.
And I feel like young Ian has been through a million times more shit, even just with Gillis Duncan.
And here we are. This is okay. Let me just see what other people say about Ian first, because we'll do William next so that we can talk about it. But I love their relationship. I think they're such opposites in the comic. Yes, I love them together. Love them so much. He's so caring, and he, you know, really is trying to do things that don't, like, you know, he wants to do things that work for her, and he doesn't want to disrespect like her beliefs or anything like that, which is something I love about Ian, because he basically like an amalgamation of all these different faiths and beliefs, and between like, being raised Catholic and then the Mohawk ways, and now like the Quaker ways. Like he really just takes it all in, and he's just such a good dude. Like I just love him so much.
Love him.
And of course, we have to say R.I.P. Rollo. I know.
No. Like
literally,
so
guys,
devastating.
I cannot explain how. I always know this was coming. I always know it's coming. Even the very first time, I was like, "Damn, Rollo's old. Like something's gonna happen."
Yeah.
And in the show, like Ian opens his eyes in bed, and I'm like, "Oh no, this is the one." Like I literally stopped the show and cried for 5 minutes straight because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this stupid dog is barely even in the show. He's barely even in the show." But I know what Rollo like means.
Yeah, he's like his companion, his like other half. Well, and that's what I love too with how Rachel was, where she was like, "I married you."
Yeah.
God.
I know. Well, and then let's just finish it off. Where he takes them to bury Henry Christian is where he has Rollo and his dad. And I'm like, or he's made.
Which I didn't get how like none of that was in the show either. I was like, did they just give up on Fergus? It makes me frustrated because I love Fergus.
They didn't have those actors in. They said they'll be another season though. They just couldn't. It's the same reason we don't have Jenny. Like they don't have room. Like what is everybody saying in the comments at the start? They don't like all the storylines. So the show, what are the storylines people like? They cut them out. Do they need to show the young Fraser storyline so that we can watch a little boy die? No, they don't need to show us that.
Okay? It was pretty traumatizing. I was not expecting that in the book, and I was like,
"Oh, I know. It's heartbreaking, but we don't need to see it. Like, if they show up again, it can just be like he died in his sleep or something to show up about it."
Yeah,
like
we don't need that on camera for that poor little boy.
I know, but yeah, Ian's wonderful. We love him. So,
yes.
Okay, we'll talk about William real quick here. So, what I was going to say is that this book for William is what Drums of Autumn is for Bree. So, it is his book of like, he's got journeys he's going on. He's got, daddy issues time to deal with.
Yeah.
He's got mommy issues now as well because he wants to know about his mom at the end. And he just got all those things to like work through still. And we're in the middle of war. And he's like, I don't know, kind of falling for Jane. Not really. I really see her more as someone he just wants to be like a protector of.
Yeah.
I don't fully know how I feel about it. And I feel like the show only confuses my feelings because they do play it as like almost more romantic, kind of. I don't truly see it that he wanted to rescue her because he was going to marry Jane and make her his woman at all. I don't think that.
I feel like he just wanted to save somebody and like help somebody. And because like then he was still like being jealous about, Rachel and stuff. So it's like I never really fully felt that, but
yes. Yeah. And so here's the thing too, because I do, as I've said, I have read this whole book through once all the way through, but I tend to skip Williams a lot. So part of the problem then when I watch the show is I'm like, oh great, I don't know what of this is true and what's not because I always skip this stuff in here. But for the most part, the show actually did most of it. What they left out was the stuff about Ben, which we will talk about then. Because they have not kept like any of Hal's children at all. Like we don't have any of Hal's children in the show. So I was even surprised when Hal showed up in the show at all. They had him in a flashback because I was like, why are you now putting him back in here to show he's here when you have not shown any of his 4 children at all?
Like, where's Dottie? Like, I'm like, the Dottie and Denny storyline, like, I get so mad that it's not in there because I love Denny.
I know. But they made decisions. They
I know. It's like
they cut those extra people. And like, I don't love that. I don't like it. But I understand it because which are the ones people skip? Like, that's honestly what we could ask. We could ask everyone watching, which chapters were you the most likely to skip? And I can tell you.
Because I would check out Williams kind of when I was listening to it. I'm like, and then I was like, wait, why isn't he going to battle? Like, what happened where he got in trouble? I don't even remember. I'm like, I don't even remember how he got into that situation. And so
Yeah,
And he got into so many crazy hijinks, like bad situations that I was just like, oh, it's William again. Like, kind of check out.
So it's kind of frustrating because what happened is like he was technically captured, and so he needs to be traded. Like he needs a prisoner trade so that he can fit, because they did a lot of stuff honor bound. Like this is the thing. Like yes, he could just escape and go back to it, but like no. He's considered like a POW even though he's like not. So he needs to be traded back in to get his like position back so that he could fight. So because that isn't able to happen because the Continental Congress isn't going to do prisoner exchanges, he's not technically being held captive anywhere, but he's also not a legal soldier. Don't hold me to that, anyone who is like really, but that's where the story, that's how Diana's telling it anyway. Yeah. So that means he's free to kind of like get into stuff. So he still happens to be wandering around in places he shouldn't be, but he is like on a mission. Like since he's not being called up to duty, he decides he's going to go find out what happened to Ben, because Ben had also been taken captive. But from what we know, then Ben was caught and was going to be treated as like a spy, and now they hang as a spy. And so that does get brought up a lot because, you know, that's what almost happens to John in the beginning. And it's why near the end, John refuses to not wear his uniform because he's like, I'd rather be captured as an officer than be captured as not being a spy, because if I'm captured as an officer, they'll put me in a building somewhere, treat me really well, and they'll trade me at the end. If I'm caught as a spy, they can hang me right away, which is what almost happened because Jamie, thank you, Jamie and Hal. We'll blame Jamie and Hal for that. It's both of their faults why that happens because of that. But so that's why like William is all running around. But before all of that happened is when like he had kind of like taken in like Jane and Fanny, and they've become like following along with the army. But by the time he gets back from what's going on, we then see that she's already been captured and is going to be put to death. The death of that guy who was like raping her and was going to rape her sister or whatever. So that is the journey that he's on. Now, what I know we dive into more in book 9, but I don't remember because I've only read it once, is we will find out more details about Amaranthus and like why she was being held and like all of those things. And about baby Trevor, like we'll find out more stuff about that one. And in fact, some of the cliffhangers at the end of Go Tell the Bees actually have to do with stuff with John and like where he's going to end up and everything. So like he has a whole journey in the 9th book. But like where's Ben, you know, like where's Ben? His body isn't his. Is he the one who put someone else there, or was like someone else hung in his place? Like where did he end up? And even his wife thinks that he's dead. So what's going on? So we'll find out about that later. So here we go. I don't skip, I trudge through. Well, good, Amanda. I'm glad. But also, like, again, this is the 3rd time I've read it. So at one point I read everything, but I don't now. I could skip all the battle military stuff. I know it's historical fiction. I know Diana says it's not a romance, but it'll blur out the battles in the army life. Yeah. Diana doesn't even know what the hell her books are. So we don't listen to herself when she tries to tell us what her books are. Like, sorry to say. She can call this they can call this historical fiction all they want, but
it's got Jamie and Claire.
It doesn't work without the romances in it, so it is not historical fiction, ma'am. It is not. But yeah, I skip a lot of that stuff too when it doesn't work. So anyway, point being with William, this book has a lot of annoying parts of William. I'm not saying anyone needs to be a fan of his. I'm not super a fan of his, but I think that where we find him at the end of this book, he is very different than when he started it. And I think we can be prepared for a more upward trajectory of him after this one. So that's how I feel about him. Cool. Yay. We'll just briefly touch on them. We love them. Yay for Dottie and Denny. We love them so much. They're so cute.
I love Denny.
And I'm sad that she's not there because I love the difference of both, because both Ian and Dottie are trying to be more Quaker for their partners, and they're both whenever they try. Dottie tries a little harder than Ian does. I mean, and she'll like try, and she's just so cute. And, I love her so much. And Denny, we can all just thank the good Lord for Denny, because without him, we have no Claire anymore. And all the training and things that she's taught him in the last couple books, and him being so open to learning what she has to share about like sanitation and about like the all those things. Like, I just love
where all the other doctors just like ignore her, don't listen to her. He respects her, and like, you know, so thank God for him, because he saved her.
Yeah, we do. Okay, then let's touch on Bree and the kids. Also, I didn't put them separate, but we get Jem's point of view in the beginning. So we have Jem's point of view, and we see what he's up to. Some very interesting things about the kids. Like, what are those crazy tots, man? What?
You know, where does their magic come from? Like, what makes them so special? All those. But like, I thought I had so much respect for Brie in this. Like, I thought it was crazy too, like where the guy was like holding her and didn't have like, you know, and then he was like threatening to rape her basically. And she was like, give me a friggin' break. And she friggin' beats him down, and I loved it. I was like, she's already been through this. She ain't gonna take it from your little slimy ass.
You're no Stephen Bonnet, buddy. Like, you're just a little wimp, man.
And then she beats him down. I'm like, yes, Brie, I love it. Like, she's such a badass with like her guns, you know, like her sitting out, like watching her place to see who's gonna show up. I was just like, I really loved Brie in this book. Like, she was so strong, and like her just wanting to get back with Roger, like that just was, I really love her and Roger so much more with each book.
Yeah.
So, and she's such a good mom, and she's so strong. And so, I don't know, I've respected her so much from this book.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. When I yawn, it hurts so bad. Yeah, it's great. Don't sneeze, everyone, when you have a rack. I'm just telling you. Oh, it's worse.
Oh,
anyway,
God.
Yes, I love Brie and Roger so much, and I just can't even imagine like the terror of it already. Is like first thinking the son has been taken. Well, I mean, he is taken, but thinking he's been taken through time. And then to have your husband go, and then to realize that he has been taken, but he's not through time. So now not only is your son in danger, but your husband's gone too.
And he ain't going to come back till he finds his kid. So it's like.
Exactly. It's so crazy. So we got to pull up a couple of these though. Here, hold on. Let me find a couple of the actual. So there's some very interesting things that get like pulled up during Bree's stuff though. So how do we think that Frank's letter got in the desk at Lollybrook?
I have no idea. Like, honestly, and the family tree thing, I was so confused. I was like, how did he have that family tree? Where I'm like, I was so confused. I'm like, I don't even know how this got there.
Hold on, let me read this. This might be the strongest book for me regarding Bree, Roger, and the kids. My favorite storyline, which was a first in the series, usually lukewarm about them. I know they got they got some good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know, like, I don't know if like maybe Frank was in Scotland before he died and like had visited that, because I'm thinking about when he did like the headstone or something, maybe he knew about Lollybrook then and like was able to go put it there for her. I don't know. Like, I was confused. And then I was trying to figure out, okay, well, how did we get this family tree? And then, you know, with this prophecy of the last line of like the Fraser or whatever. I know it's not Fraser, but yeah, I kind of forgotten about that. I'm like, oh yeah, but then like, she's not like the last one, so her kids could be in danger, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's crazy to me, this stuff that Frank like knows about it is weird.
Yeah,
but it's also strange because he's left like multiple things too, because there's this letter that he finds, and I kind of wonder, because there was the other letter that Roger found that had been left with his dad. So it's kind of like he left letters in multiple places because he didn't
so that
know
they would for sure find it or something, you know.
Right, because the
Well,
letter
it just
that
shows
was
you how much he knew that like he didn't tell Claire.
Yeah.
It's like, Frank, God damn it.
Yeah. Well, and see, I don't like, I still feel as complex about him as I ever did. Like, am I mad at him, or do I understand that he obviously sees how like dangerous it could be and like maybe wouldn't want her to know? So like I'm torn on him. Like I kind of get it. You know, it makes him feel less spiteful the more that I read. That's how I feel. Whereas earlier on, when Claire is just getting him back and we know that Frank knew, but he didn't tell her because he was so, it makes you feel kind of like, well, you know, she could have went back to him sooner. And so it makes you feel more spiteful towards Frank because we like blame him for it when really he is blameless in a lot of aspects. There's certainly things he's for, but this was never his fault that he has an ancestor who is so gross, or that his wife is the one who went back, and he does love Bree the way he does. And look at all of this research he did on behalf of his daughter, and like he prepared. So it's like I go back and forth on him all the time, especially when we, you know, when I restart the series and read it, because there's so much like, you know, struggle between Jamie and Claire because of him. But it's like, what would be different if he had let them tell, you know, like it's that type of
because would she leave Bree, like, you know, back then, like, you know, and it's like he didn't want to lose Bree, but he was also preparing her. So it's like I felt like everything he did was for his daughter, like not to be like spiteful. So I understand Frank. It just like he knew so much.
And there's also this thing of like, what was he supposed to do? Try to win Claire back over? You know, we wouldn't have really liked that either. Like, we want her to be detached enough that she wants to go back. So it's this weird, it's this weird place. And so that's why, like, by the end of all of this, you know, he's done so many things to set it up that she has the possibility to see Jamie. He can't quite go to the place where he hands it off himself, because that is like self-sabotaging in a way he doesn't want. But he did so many things that even if Claire had never told her, because he says that in the letter, he's like, I assume she might, if I'm dead when you're you know, he's like, I assume you might know. But if you don't, hey, hi, this was true. You know, like he even sets it that if something were to happen to both him and Claire, that she could still find out about it. And that is pretty admirable to me.
Well, and it's pretty crazy that he even believed it, you know? Like that he looked into it to believe in it, you know?
Because he wanted to prove it wrong, and at every turn and you know, and even with like the family tree, put it together where he was like, you know, this was real. And in the same way, this is where like I always used to feel that like Jamie was more respectful of Frank than Frank was of him. And I don't really feel that by the end. Like, I think Frank, you know, because how can he not be thankful for Bree? And how can Jamie not be thankful for Bree? You know, like they both have Bree because of the other person. So, you know, I still always say I will feel that bit of anger for how Claire was treated by him. But then I just slip into like, well, but what would you feel like if you did truly like love your spouse and then they came back and, you know, so it's all right to have complex feelings about Frank. And I like that Bree gets to see how complicated it was, because, you know, we think back to even like book 4 and 5 where she had such holy thoughts of her dead dad. And whenever Jamie would mess up, she was so quick to like be like, well, you're not my daddy. Like, screw this.
Yeah, she defended everything Frank, and then now she sees like the nuance of it. And then having met Jamie and seeing Jamie and her mom together, like opened her eyes to like what the real love story, you know, and partnership was. So
she now has kids too. You know, like once you have your own kids, it's like, could you just hand them over? You know, I don't know. So, okay, this is true, Cyan. I think that's how you say your name. Sorry if I mispronounce that, but I know I'm really glad they didn't do this in the show. because it makes Ernie look like I get it. I believe
I don't need the danger at my place.
Right. Like, I believe that Ernie and her have like 4 of their own kids or something. They have 2 to 4 kids. I don't know how many they have. And so I kind of get it, but it's also like, you absolute spineless jerk. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, you could have called the police then. Like they wouldn't believe Bree, but
Mhm.
like you had. So that's so
Yeah.
annoying. He does that. But anyway, stupid Ernie, which I don't want to think that about him. Like, I like Ernie, but I don't
Yeah.
want to think that. So yes, okay, let's talk just quickly about
Oh,
meets. I love this moment.
so crazy.
So wild. But
Yeah.
why do you think that he prayed? Well, I don't know. I think it's if he can even put just a little. It obviously doesn't work because we
Yeah.
know EJR what he will still do. But
I
it's
don't
almost
think praying's gonna help him, but
right. It's almost like to put just this tiny bit of guilt on him or something, if he can,
yeah.
possibly, just to make him feel that a little bit. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
so terrifying. But
It's so
it's also
Roger to like try to find the
yeah,
good in somebody and try and reach that good. And so he's just trying to do it because he can't warn anybody about like
yeah,
what's gonna happen. So it's like that's kind of what he could kind of try and do, try to reach him, but you're like, we know him.
yeah. It's not
None
gonna
of that is gonna help him.
work. It also, it's also crazy to me because the very first time I read this, I always thought like this is like the closest to seeing Frank that like Roger
Yeah.
ever is. Which is weird. I don't want to compare those two, but I mean, in the way that William always looks like Jamie, like
Yeah.
JR is a spitting image of Frank. So it's so strange.
Like, did he get to see him when Frank and Claire first got there, like when he was a kid? Or did he only see Claire? I can't remember, but
Oh,
like when they were first there.
he saw him, but he was really little.
Yeah, he wouldn't remember
He
what he
talks to
looked like.
friends about like what he remembers of him, and it was like nothing.
Yeah.
Roger prayed because he couldn't do anything else. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. It just makes you love Roger more
I
that,
know.
he tries. Like he's
I love Roger so much. Okay, let's see which other characters did I have before. Because yeah, the whole like Roger and Buck stuff is just like wild. All that stuff is crazy. Like, there is the question of
the Buck and Gillis thing that like happened in there. I was like, ooh.
so creepy, so creepy. Like, could Roger have tried to warn the Frasers about what's gonna come? I think we all know you can't really like do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't do it.
Yeah. Ooh, here was one about them that I had in here. Jem feels like he can almost see the spot that feels like the stones. This is when I forgot to mention this one, but when he's in there, do you think that is something that he can do? Or that Claire, Bree, and Roger can do as well? Well, I don't think that. This was like I said, a question I stole from
Yeah.
where I looked at them. I think we've talked about this before. I think that things are more amplified for him. And I do think it's amazing because what I think is interesting is that a lot of places where there are the places where you can go through, they are marked by stones or by whatever. And I think that's because through time, there have been people like Jem who could see it. And so
Yeah.
then they like, put something up there.
That makes sense. Like they marked it for like.
Yeah. So I don't think that's something that, the other adults can do. I think they hear it, they feel it. It's always said,
Yeah.
that's Bree knew there. She's
Because
like,
Bree
oh,
couldn't Bree when she was locked down there, she could feel it like, and so I
yeah,
just was thinking, oh, it's like the same thing where Bree sensed it, but
right.
maybe Jem's more like amplified, like with what he can sense.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's shown with the kids that it's gotten stronger in the generations with them. But I think that he maybe can see it, and has a sense of it, and that there are other travelers who are able
Yeah.
to see it, and they've marked it as like a warning or a place of magic or whatever. Because there are other places throughout the world that they're marked in places as well. And then there's one like, the one there where like something's been built over it because it's, there hadn't been maybe travelers who'd come through there to notice it. So anyway, okay, so yeah, those are kind of the big character ones to hit. Now I have a few other like questions here because getting a little stiff here. So
poor thing.
I know. I'll survive. I'm having a good time. Like I said, I need the good visits. Some other questions. So, okay, here we go. I want to do this question first. Sorry. I wanted to do this question first because I love this part actually, and I want to know what people think. Are there ways that you think Lord John Grey knows Jamie better than Claire? And I like it this time around because that isn't something being thrown in Claire's face this time.
Yeah.
As it was in like book 4, where Claire is very jealous and is trying to like point out things that Claire wasn't aware of. And she's like, he's told me about that. Or like, he's told me about that or whatever. It's true. Like she does understand that now more. Right. So what about you guys who read it? Like, do you think there are things that he does or he doesn't? It's okay. The answer can be no. But do you think there are some things that Grey understands better than Claire does?
I think he probably knows him. Like, again, he did throw it in her face before, but like from that time when Jamie was without her and, was struggling for many years. And plus he's, a military type of man. And I think Lord John Grey could kind of relate to his responsibilities and the things like that. But I mean, I don't know if anybody could know Jamie as much as Claire because they're just, but I do think, Lord John Grey and him had such a beautiful like friendship and they respected each other for so many years that he did know Jamie on like a deep level.
Yeah. So my answer to this, you kind of said, I think that John has seen Jamie truly at his lowest point. And I in like grief wise, because Claire has seen him at, post Wentworth type of low. So yes. But I think that and Karen said it too. I think he knows Jamie's grief in ways that Claire can't, because the low after Wentworth, though that was a different kind of thing, which completely absolutely deep, absolutely devastating. Yes. But again, when this question's being asked this time, it's not from that place of like, who knows them like better. It's what ways does he know? What ways does he know him better? That's like different. And I think that it's this truly, because the lowest that Jamie's ever been, Claire has always been like with him when she's seen him. And John Grey has seen him when he was barely like, he was just a walking ghost, right?
Yeah.
John was the one who kind of he was a friend to him and their, relationship while he was in prison and then Hellwater. Jamie's slowly coming back, but he was still never his full self.
He was living like half his like life and he was living without Claire. So he was like basically hopeless and without his like being in his home and part of his family. Like he was basically had to be separate from them too. So he was just truly like alone.
And now John also knows Claire without Jamie.
Yeah.
So that's why, in my opinion, now Claire understands the relationship John had with Jamie, and Jamie, once he can acknowledge it, will understand the relationship that John and Claire have that he won't with her. Jamie's just not in that place yet. It took Claire how many years? It's taken her to that point. So Jamie's not ready to be there.
Yeah.
But also the difference too is that John's not in love with Claire, like Jamie, and that's Claire knows that. But I love the relationship John and Claire have by the end, and I believe I know I've teased at that throughout the whole read along. It's like I love John and Claire's relationship, and it all comes to this. And he calls her I think like sweetheart at points of just he's such a kind man. He's such a loving man, and Like, I love that. Like, I even love, like, John, I just love him. I just love him so much. I
Yeah.
love when he's out to eat with Dottie and she gets sick. And he's like, did you realize you were pregnant? She's like, I did 5 minutes ago. And that. And he, like, goes in and gets the food to go. And is like, well, I'm
Yeah.
starving. So, but I don't want
Yeah, I love him. He's such like a, like, that's what makes it so sad is like to be always pining after Jamie. You know, you just feel for him because it's like, it's never.
Yeah.
And, but he's just such a good man, you know, like, so I just love his character.
Yeah. Okay, just a couple more here. Here's this one. Didn't grab this one here. Why or what does it say that William went to Jamie for help with Jane?
I think that was huge for him to do that because of all his issues, daddy issues throughout this whole book. And it just shows how much he knew like Jamie could get stuff done. Like where I think even like Jamie's like, if you thought you could do it, like you wouldn't have come to me. Like, and I just loved that he actually went to Jamie. He sucked up his pride and like actually went to Jamie and asked for help because he knows Jamie gets shit done and that he would help him. As you know, at a drop of a hat, like Jamie would help. So,
yeah, I think honestly, the show shows this very well, actually, because John would help, but he can help in a like political way, right? Like he'll
like a more legal way, like.
And Jamie will just go. He's like, "You want her out? All right, we'll go get her." Like,
yeah,
and yeah, I think he just knows that he knows the strengths of Jamie at this point. And yeah, I really like that he does that, even though it's very tragic end to it.
Yeah.
I really love that. William was desperate and knew Jamie could and would help. Yes. But I also think it starts to show a bit of like trust coming for that too, because it was a big thing. Felt like Jamie owes him the help too. Yeah, he's a bit of an entitled little shit at the same time. I think it showed that he was willing to overcome his issues with Jamie because he really wants to save Jane. Yes. And this is where it comes to, as I said, I don't feel like there was truly anything romantic between those two, even though they, she did have sex with him out of her own sense of honor, which I thought was funny. Because when he says, he's like, I tried, like I wanted to save you. And I don't think there was anything pretentious or whatever. Like we said, it was the one thing he wanted to be able to do. Like he can't control who his father is. He can't fight because they won't let him in. He couldn't find his cousin, but he thinks he can rescue Jane. And when he doesn't, it's really kind of that last bit of what he was like holding on to. Well, screw it.
Yeah, it was kind of giving him a purpose through all this strife, that emotional strife and turmoil he was going through. It's like he could help Jane and her sister. Like it gave him something to like work towards.
Yeah. So, okay. So now we'll skip through. As I said, I loved being back with the other Frasers and all of us being together. Though I do write in my book, part 7, I literally say, literally the worst part in the history of all the parts is part like 8. It's part 8, not part 7. I wrote at the end because that's the one where like we lose Jane and Henry Christian, I think, in the same part.
Yeah, that was tough.
No, it's right before the end. Okay. Part 7 is the worst. Part 7, we lose Henry Christian and Rollo. And then in part 8, so like all of that happened. And then for part 9, I literally write, I was like, things need to get happier now. Thank you. That's what I write. Part 9.
Yeah, that's why like I got chills at the end because I was like literally listening to it and it's like, it's going to happen. But to like hear it, I'm like, oh, like, like Jamie and Claire never thought they would see them again, So I was just like,
don't skip to the good stuff. Come on. We'll get to that. I hope they don't do his storyline. I know. I hope we don't either. I hope either just leave it be because truly, like when I look at season 9, like we don't need to have killed him.
Yeah. Well, with the fact that they haven't had Fergus and all that stuff going on, why do we need to add that then? Like, it's just too depressing.
If we're gonna lose him, they can literally do it in a sentence if they want to. Like, just be like, we lost him in a fire.
Yeah, fire.
I don't know, because I don't know what they'll do. I don't know what they'll do if we'll,
Yeah.
you know, because where the show stops, we haven't gotten to go get the press. We aren't back at the Ridge yet.
Mm-hmm.
As I speculate in mine, I hope that the first episode of the season is us getting back to the Ridge. Like,
yeah,
we'll do all of that, but we'll see. I hope they don't do it either, Jess. I truly do. So, but I do like when they're all together. There's some weird, of course, things she throws in there, like with the slave that she has to do surgery on her, and like the botched
mm-hmm.
that is just so awful. Like, it's just so awful to see.
Yeah.
And you lose Henry Christian, and just all of it is so much. But then it's finally enough for us to start heading home. And there's something about it too. I do love when they're like all having to work to like take care of each other. Like, they're literally back to having to go hunting and fishing and like scraped it. Like, I love that type of stuff. And I love that they actually still have like the gold that she'd hidden under whatever. So they still have some stuff.
Yeah.
But then we head back to the Ridge and we have some happy things happen, which is nice. We have the birth of the baby, and we get Adso back, and we're building our home back. And then right at the end, we discover that Bree and Roger are back right at the end. And this, y'all, of course, those of us who've been reading it a long time will know that this was the cliffhanger we had to wait for literally years. Literal years. Let me check. When did this book come out? Was this 2014? Let me check. When did this? Yeah, 2014. This one came out. And the last one came out the Thanksgiving of like 2022. So literally 8 years we had to wait. But this is where I also said, as you can see, this wouldn't have been a horrible place to end the show. I stand by that. Okay. I want to see the stuff in the next book. But being as someone who had to wait, I didn't have to wait 8 years. I had to wait like 3.5. I was happy with where this was at, right? Because they had returned to it. We were like, oh, it's going to be happy. Like, I wouldn't have been disappointed. Besides, of course, there's loose threads that exist. But I wouldn't have been angry if this had been our last book. And I wouldn't have been upset if the show had ended here like I thought they were going to. I truly think this would have been okay, because it's like we're back at the Ridge. We're through the part of the war we need to get through. Like, he's out now. They're back home with their family rebuilding. And then you have hello, the house, and they're all there. And I was like, it would have been okay. I'm just saying that.
Yeah. Reunited all together. Like, I would have been happy, you know, like that's.
I'm definitely all right with where this one ends. And it's why, like, I still will stand by it. We'll see what they do in this last season of the show. But now I'm even nervous because what are they trying to say about, like, I think
so confused.
It should have ended here. So I'm a little bit like, oh God, what are you going to do? So anyway, let me read this here. I'm so happy I never got into Outlander before this read along, because the years and years and decades of waiting, I'd have burned my books. Yes, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you, waiting for the next George R.R. Martin book for the Game of Thrones, for it to be done right, is literally killing me. And I'm like, stop writing other books. Stop writing shows. Get the freaking series done. And it's years. Ugh. So
I thought they'd go back as soon as they decided to live in Lallybroch. It told me they truly wanted to be there. Otherwise, I feel like they would have chosen not to live there. I mean, moved on. Truly wanted to be back in the past. Yeah.
Because it's like 2 in the books, like she's running for, like, the guy's still chasing her in the current timeline. So I was like, they can't go back to the, the 80s because they'd be in danger. So I'm like, you have to go back to your parents, hopefully.
Well, she could have went back with Roger. Like, they would go back, and, like, the police would believe him. But
believe the man.
yeah, I mean, dude, we'd be like, "You're not getting the gold. Like, it's not happening,
Yeah.
bro. Bye. Bye. Go
Yeah, it's
somewhere
not
else."
happening. Nobody's getting scolded.
I will say, like, because I didn't know where this ended, right? There was no clue of the others. So I was absolutely in like sobs, like ugly sobs. And the first time I read it, I didn't quite understand what it was because they don't straight up say who it is. It just says, it describes them, and then, they are running down the hill. And like,
Yeah.
I reread the last page of this like 3 times the first time, and I'm like, what? Like, oh my God, it's that, like,
Yeah.
I cry so hard. And it's just so beautiful. I love it.
I also love the moment too where Bree and Roger reunite. Like, that part was just like, oh my God.
Told you. The show did that so good. I talked about it. It was perfection. Literally, when he just screams her name, and I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
And then when he says,
it's so good.
Real? He's like, is this real? And he's like, it's real. I'm like,
so good.
I'm so happy. So I still stand by they could have done the entire Mackenzie storyline in one like 90-minute episode, but that's okay.
Yeah.
They like drug that puppy out for so long. But it's drug out in the book too. Like it really is. I love that they decided to go back, and I don't know about anyone else, but before I went to bed last night, I listened to the first chapter of book 9 because I love it. And when they're all back together is the greatest thing. It's the greatest thing, you guys. The first like 10 chapters of book 9 are just us all like loving each other. And
oh, that's so good. Like, after all that pain, we need some happiness.
Yeah. And there's scenes of like Bree and Jamie and Roger and Claire and Bree, like, oh, they're just all so good. And
it's amazing.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. There's nothing like when the author is someone who takes their sweet ass time, because when you want them to take their sweet ass time, they do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one I'm on to. But there's also some serious pain coming in the next book, so be prepared.
Oh gosh, of course.
I promise it's no one that we truly, truly love, but it still hurts like it does,
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay. All right, last couple things here. Oh, I hope Buck is still around. Would love to see him like Ned the attorney. Yeah.
I love Ned.
So, all right, the last things here. So, what do you think of Claire's decision to forgive the man who raped her? What did everybody
I kind of felt like, didn't Jamie decide to forgive, like, whatever, Jack or whatever? Yeah, I felt like he decided to forgive him in his way so he could deal with it. So maybe she was trying to do that too, to finally move on from like feeling that. So I felt like she was trying, because that's really hard to do, obviously, like, to do the forgiveness, but it's better for you so that you like, so she could move on past that trauma. And I think she also, which is kind of complicated, where he was kind of this desperate, like where he's having sex with his wife type of thing, where she's like, oh, he's so pathetic, and like this. So it's like, obviously you don't want to have empathy. You don't really usually have empathy with your abuser, but he was like a mess, So I think she just knew she had to do it for her to be able to move on.
She said that, back in book 6, she was like, Blackjack targeted you and was obsessed with you. And I was just a hole for someone.
Yeah.
And, when Jamie's like, does that make it better? And she's like, no, but it's dehumanizing in a totally different way, where you could have been anyone. And whereas he wanted you for you, which again, neither one of them is okay. They are both absolutely evil things. But from Claire's point of view, she's trying to show of like, it is one thing if you are the sole target of it, and it's another thing that if there had been,
anybody else there, they would have done it.
Any other woman there would have been this treated the same as me. And this guy is like so pathetic and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he looks pretty hard, at the end of this, where he's doesn't got the best life going on here at the end,
Should Jenny have told Jamie about the man that she saw at the trading post?
I don't know. I think Jenny was just looking out for Claire and also letting Jamie know, because her and Jamie are kind of similar mindset on that, I think. Yeah. And Jamie was not going to let that guy just go be walking around unpunished. Like, it ain't going to happen. It could be a future threat. Obviously, probably not. But I think Jamie that's just who he is. He's going to have to take care of it. And so I think Jenny is that same.
He made an oath all that time ago. He said, kill them all. And so I think the very true thing about this is that I understand her wanting to, like, I need to forgive him either way, because here's the thing. And they both know this. And this is where, like, Jamie was going to do that no matter what. But also, will even say, he says it to Bree when he's comforting her after her assault. He's like, that man's been dead 20 years and he's still a ghost on my back. He still shows up. He's still there. You never forget it. But I've made, like, peace with it to the degree that I can. It doesn't mean that Blackjack Randall deserved to live out his days just because he forgiven him. No, Jamie still deserved to have him be dead. But even when someone's dead, they will still haunt you. So you should, you still need to find the peace, the forgiveness, because it's going to haunt you no matter what. You're either haunted by their physical form or you're haunted by their ghost.
Yeah. So he's still having nightmares about him, like it's like.
Right. He's like, it never goes away. He's like, he's still, again, in this one, even he has the nightmares about him still. And Claire can tell when it's a nightmare of which one. But so when we get to this of, like, did Jamie really have to kill him? And it's like, yes, he did. And it doesn't matter that Claire forgave him or not, because she still would have needed to forgive that man for herself.
Yeah.
I mean, not need to, but, like, she still would have needed to forgive him to move on from it, whether Jamie killed the man or not. So yes, Jamie needed to kill the man. He doesn't just get away with it.
Yeah.
Still wish we did it that way now. You should be killed for that. But I think she also still needed to, like, forgive him.
Yeah.
To do that. And I think seeing him made her realize she wasn't over it, right? And not that she was, like, to have the PTSD come at her like that, she's like, wow, I don't want to be caught off guard like this again. So I need to
run in, like, the chance of her running into him again, like seeing him again is going to bring it all back every time.
Yeah. So she really needed to figure it out. So last two questions here, for real this time, are what was, like, your least favorite part, and what was your favorite part of the book? You can do storyline too if you want, but let's actually try to be like, because I think we've all kind of agreed of which storyline we don't care for. But was there specifically a part you really, like, didn't care for, or thought didn't need to be in the book, not just something we didn't like? What did we think?
I don't know. Like, I didn't dislike anything. I did get confused by, like, elements, but I think that was me, like, not fully paying attention, honestly. So some of, like, the constant struggles that William goes through, I think I kind of check out, but I love the William storyline with Jane. So, like, I thought that was important. And I do think his story is important.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I don't know if I really disliked anything, because it was all, like, important to the story and to each character's, like, journey.
Yeah. Stumped by my own question here. I don't actually.
One thing I didn't like, and even though it was my favorite, was their conversation together, was when Claire's like, well, we didn't sleep together. Like, she was doing that when she was getting really, like, I'm like, oh, well, we weren't in the bed, or we were on. I was like, okay, don't.
Yeah. What are you doing?
Don't, like, be picky about what you slept together.
Yeah.
But anyways.
I'm trying to think what I don't like. I personally don't care about the Percy Wainwright stuff. I really don't like it.
Yeah.
again, that storyline is not completely like satisfied yet. I'll say that. That is not done. And I'm not even in book 9. Like, I don't know the ending of it. So it's hard for me to like say that, but also I can say that because I don't really care for him. And maybe I'd feel different if I read the Lord John Grey, but I've read a really, really detailed review and summary of the books where he's in it too. And I just don't care for it. So
it seems super random when he shows up. It's like, oh, here he is again. Like, and then like Fergus doesn't want to know, so he's like, whatever. So it's like,
and I mean, again, like there's more going on in Go Tell the Bees. We get more of him, and like maybe I just am not remembering it that clearly, but there was just so much of it, and it's so confusing, and like I just think we had enough going on. And then my favorite. Can't put my arm. My favorite parts are, I mean, I love Ian and Rachel's wedding, and I love him being reunited with his mom too. I love that Jenny and Ian get reunited after he thought he lost there. Oh, so good. And also, it's a super tiny spot. It's a super tiny scene, but it just stabs me in the heart in the best way, is when Jamie and Ian are getting ready for war, and Jamie comes upon, like Jamie's helping him get ready, which I love. Like he puts on his war makeup.
Yeah.
In the show, Rachel does that, but I love that Jamie does it because it's very much like a warrior moment for the both of them. And then like, who do you like pray to or pray about? And he says, and he's like, do you ever pray to my dad? And he's like, well, your dad was always just with me. Didn't have to pray. And I'm like, so good. I love it so much.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I love those moments so much. So
yeah,
I just love it. I love it all. Even the stuff that is a lot to get through. And I hope, you know, those of you watching too, if you want to share us your favorite parts, because we're going to wrap this up. And you guys know I don't have us rate these anymore because that's not what this is for. But I would love to know where it kind of ranks for everybody as of now. Like, tell me where this kind of fits. Is this in the upper half? Is this in the lower half? Like, where does it fit for you? In kind of your ranking wise, because as I've said, for me they're all 5s and 6s because I would spend every waking minute with Jamie and Claire if I could, so I don't really rate them.
But I think it's definitely in the upper, because after I felt like upset at the end of the last one, which even then I was like, it's still a fantastic book, but I was just feeling bitter. This one resolved it in such a way where like I felt so much more understanding, and then I was like accepting of it, and there was so much that happened, and it's so many great parts to this book that I was like, it was definitely a great one.
Yeah, there's a lot of character payoffs. And I think it is one of the reasons why like William sticks out so sourly in this, is because we're having so many other characters who are at like the peak of their character. So he's the character that is still young and still struggling through. And we have like Bree and Roger at the top of their game, so in sync with each other, even through time. We have, you know, Claire and Jamie. Yeah, they're going through their stuff, but they're not too old to go through some learning curves too. I like that about everything. So there's so much that so many characters are at their peak self. And then William feels like the whiny baby of it, but it's like, he kind of is.
He is young.
It's okay. Like, he's not done yet. He hasn't done anything impossible. You know, even his conversation with Jamie at the end, I personally think Jamie's almost too defensive with him. I know he's being a bit of a punk. He's like, do you think I have to tell you how the sex was or whatever? And I'm like, Jamie, you know what he wants to know. Okay.
He just wants to know about his mom and what happened, and just
I'm like, yes, he's coming at you at kind of a punk way. And I hope that in the future, like, they will have that conversation again where William is like, I want to know what she was like, instead of him being like, you know, did you rape her? Blah, 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 like those things. But I think he truly wants to know, but he doesn't know how to ask that as like a boy who's like, I want to know something about her, you know. And when Jamie even says, he's like, she was courageous, like she was brave. And he's like, how can she have been brave? Like she cheated on her husband, or you did, like what, you know. He just can't get it yet. He can't get it yet. And
he's in like the black and white view of Point instead of seeing like the gray of like what happened between them.
Yeah. I'm going to need a reread of the whole series at some point at my own pace. Yes, to really figure it out. Exactly. Well, Amanda, same, man. Same. But every book after the first one has been great to me. Oh, stab.
She didn't like the first one?
The first book was even great, but I didn't like Claire yet. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, okay.
See, that's
well, that
where
is
you're
tough because she's thinking about Frank the whole time, half the book.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
when you reread it, Amanda, someday you'll have to tell me how you feel then. Because when you say it like that, I totally get it. Claire is annoying when you go back.
Yeah.
Because, yes, she is focused on Frank the whole time. So I'll be interested if once you reread it, if you understand her better.
Yeah.
You know, when you look at how many years of character development we have to have, Claire can't be perfect yet.
Yeah.
We're in for a boring thing. Jamie, he's pretty perfect the whole time. Like, we know.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I don't get when I look at people's reviews where they go attack Jamie in that book. I'm like, how could you attack Jamie's perfect?
I'm sorry.
In every book.
You are wrong. If you don't think he's the most perfect man to exist, you are wrong. Find me a better one.
I know. I'm like, poor Samuel. And like, how are you even get like other roles are never going to compare to this role? Like, it's just the best.
I know, like he has that show right now, like the couple
one or whatever.
I want to watch it, even though it has Demelza in it. It has Demelza, and I really want to watch it, but I'm also like, so okay, sorry, sidetrack. We're wrapping it up, people. If you're ready to go, you can go. I just want to say this. A few years back, there was the one that with Mila Kunis. It was a spy movie with him in it. She's like undercover as a spy or whatever because she ends up accidentally or something, and he's like her handler or whatever. And like it was so hard to watch because number one, he's like wearing regular clothes, and number two, like seeing him kiss someone else, I'm like, I can't do it.
Yeah, like with even just the previews for this one, I'm like, where's his hair? Like,
I know. And I mean, he's sexy anytime, y'all. Like,
yeah, he's amazing. But
especially
because and then it's like about like two open relationships or something, and I'm like, that's not Jamie. So it's gonna be tough. Like even me with Kit Harington, like I love Jon Snow, and then like when I watched him with something else and he had short hair and he had his beautiful Jon Snow hair, I was like, oh, like
I bet he's a bad guy. See, I could probably watch him as bad guy, Amanda.
Yeah.
Because I know from the previews of that with like Eleanor Tomlinson, like, yeah, there's like cheating and like
stuff
like I don't know, but I probably will because I still have my stars. And so I'll probably watch it.
I had it on my DVR, but I forgot to set it up to record, so I didn't get the first episode. So that's like why I haven't watched it. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I'll have to be in a mood because I think it also maybe has some suspense in it too. But anyway, let's go wrap this up. I need to take some medicine and chill out. But this was great. I haven't set the date for the next one yet. I actually want to ask what people think. So I'm thinking of doing that one like the end of April. But we can do it sooner if people think they want to read right away. Or do you still want like that almost 2 months to do it? Like, I don't know. Like, because do you want to get to it faster? Because otherwise I would do it like the beginning of April. Because I don't want to do it in March. I have another readathon I'm doing. But we could either do it at the beginning of April or we could do the end of April. Like, how much do people want? The longest amount is better.
I'm good with the end of April.
Okay. I mean,
just so I know I get to it. Although I freak out and then I read it way before even like the thing, and then I'm like, wait, will I remember everything that happened?
That's fine. I'm fine doing this more time. I just also am like want to wrap up the readathon.
Yeah.
Read along. It's been a long time, but we don't have to rush it. We don't have to rush it. Yeah, because I'm doing a readathon in March, and then this time I didn't want to have one the same time as I had my historical romance readathon, which the next one will be in May, so that's fine. The one before this, they were like the same week, kind of like close to each other, and I was like,
So
I can't.
you do the mafia one too in May, or is that wrong?
Yes. No, it'll be in May. Yeah, we'll be doing the mafia one. So April will work best.
Yeah.
I could have done it at the beginning or the end, but yeah, we can go for the end of April. Okay, cool. I will make up I'll pick a date for it, but we'll do the end of April so everyone has time. But yeah, just one more to go, guys. One more to go. We can do it. But thank you all for joining. Thanks for reading it. You guys are so great. And we'll see you next time. That's it. That's what I got. Have a great night, everybody.